Welcome to the video, everybody. My name is John. Thanks for checking out part 3 of this video series, specifically teaching us how to take eBay sales data over the last 90 days and pulling it into Google Sheets so we can do various data analysis and make us more effective buyers and sellers. Where we left off yesterday was creating a count and pulling over the actual sales data, which was it's a part 2 video, but it was really kind of part 1 of everything. If you haven't watched the prior video, I would say you probably need to watch it first because you have to go through that section to really, impart this second section. And then if you actually just want to see a demonstration of the tool and how it worked, the original tool at least, feel free to go watch the original part 1 video. And that's nothing more than a demonstration video, but it'll give you an idea of exactly what we're working through. Okay, so where we left off yesterday was this count, and we did pull over the sales data kind of behind the scenes, but the only thing we're representing on this page is the count. And I've taken the liberty to go ahead and add a couple of other pieces of information here. So please feel free to pause and add those if you are following along. We do have an average price, the highest price, and the lowest price. We will pull that information in today, and those will be total prices, which include the shipping. So I always like to denote that. All right, we're going to go ahead. Actually, before we do that, I think this will be easier if we use our sample card, that 1954 Topps Hank Aaron. That was card number 128 in a PSA 3. Reason why I wanted to reduce this card is we have 57 or 58 sales of the Charles Barkley card. We only have 8 sales, and so it'll just be easier to view the information on the screen by having less data in this demonstration. And again, I mentioned it yesterday and I mentioned it in the prior videos. You don't have to build this for sports card data. You can build this for literally anything. These are nothing but search variables. All that was kind of talked about in part 2 of the video series. So feel free to go watch that part 2. Okay, let's move to the second worksheet that we created. That second worksheet is where we have the URL and the item price. That's where I left you guys yesterday. As you can see, I've already added in a shipping table. So please feel free to add a sheet and rename it shipping. I do want to reference on the URL sheet. We will be referencing our dynamic URL today. Looking at the items price sheet, these are the sales of that Hank Aaron card. And I've also taken the liberties on this page to add in an average price, a high price, and a low price, since those will be the 3 queries that we come away with from today's video. Taking a look at that shipping data, please, again, make sure that you've created this worksheet already. This information will not be in the worksheet that you just created, but it will be in the video description notes below. This XML is different than the XML string that we used yesterday. This has 2 bits of class information. The first class is this S-item __ shipping, and the second is the S-item _ logistics cost. Now, having both of these here, it will omit that funny $20 point that we seen yesterday that I had you guys on the item price just ignore and add the black bar for. By having this kind of dual search, it will omit that and everything will line up. The reference formula that I have here, again, the actual formula will be in the description below. So feel free to just copy and paste that when we get to the next section. Let's just go ahead and kick off that next section, which is building the formula itself. So the formula to get the shipping is identical to the formula we used yesterday to get the item price. That is equals import XML. And much like yesterday, we need to reference the URL. So I'm going to navigate over to the URL tab, and I am going to click on the URL in cell A11. I'm going to come back up to our formula bar and put a comma. Then I'm going to navigate back over to the shipping. And again, please make sure that you've already pasted this in cell A1. So we are going to select cell A1, and we are going to do a closing parentheses, which is going to complete our formula. And when I hit enter, we now have shipping data. And now you'll see on that shipping data, some of this is free and some of it isn't free. We are going to take what is free and we are going to convert that to a 0 shipping cost. And then whatever is not free, we are going to omit that plus symbol and the word shipping after it. And we do that with this substitute. Now you can feel free to take this substitute that I put in the video description below and paste that into cell B4 if you're literally following along in the same cells that I'm using. If not, you'll need to re-reference the actual cell information if you're using a cell higher up on the sheet. That said, let's go ahead and I'm just going to start creating these multiple substitutes, and I'll kind of explain what's taking place as we go throughout this query. So we're going to add in 3 substitutes. So equals substitute, a second substitute, a third substitute. And then after that third substitute, this is where I want to reference the specific cell where we want to start substituting. And in our case, this is cell A4. I'm going to then put a comma because we have the reference of the cell. And now I want to say, what about cell A4 do I want to look for and substitute? Well, I'm going to look for a plus symbol. Now there's not one here, but I still want to look for it because in some of these other cells, there is a plus symbol. And to look for something, we are going to put the reference look in between double parentheses. And so we've got a double parenthesis. We're going to put a plus, and we're going to close that with a double parenthesis. So basically we're saying, look for everything that's in between these 2 sets of double parentheses. Double quotations. From there, I want to put in a comma, and I want to say, okay, now I'm looking in between these double quotations for a plus. If I find it, what do you want me to substitute that with? Well, I want you to substitute it with nothing. So I'm just going to put 2 sets of double quotations with nothing in between them. And then we're going to close this first substitute down with a closing parentheses, and we're going to move to the second substitution we want to do. And to move that to that second, we're going to put in a comma. We're going to add, or we're going to look for the word free. So we are going to have a double quotation, type the word free. We're going to close that because, again, we only want to look for something in between. Whatever's in between the double quotations is what we're looking for. So we want to find the word free, and if we find that word free, we want to replace or substitute that with a 0. So we're going to put a comma, and then with double quotation, we want to put a 0 because we're going to replace free with 0. Close that with another set of double quotations, and then we're going to close this second substitute with a closing parentheses. We're on to the third and final one here, and we're going to put a comma to go to the third and final one. We are now going to look for the word shipping, and we're actually going to look for space shipping. If you look at our reference up here, or if you actually look at the cells over here, in between the word free and shipping, there is a space, and in between the 0 and shipping, there's a space. So we want to capture that space as well. So we're going to do double parentheses, a space, the word shipping, closing double parentheses, comma to move to what we want to change it to. And again, we're going to change it to nothing. So we're just going to put 2 sets of double parentheses, and then a closing, and I keep saying parentheses, double quotation marks, and then we're going to put in a closing parenthesis. And when we hit enter, voila, we're going to get our 0. Now I'm going to not autofill that down, and I'll explain why. If you did, no problem. I'll explain why here in a moment. So because there was no price, it's going to, and there's the word free in the shipping that we pulled across from eBay. We want to turn that into a 0, which we've done here. So if you remember yesterday, we looked at a range of cells because if we were searching a card or an item that had more than these 8 cells, when I say cells, sold items. Say we have 15 sold items or 20 or 50 sold items, we want to make sure that we have formulas for all of those references. So to do that, we're actually going to take this formula and paste it in the next 100 cells down, or down to row 100. So I'm simply going to copy this, click in the cell directly below, and I'm going to drag my cursor down to row 100, and I am going to paste. And so now if I click in B100, you'll see that it copied a formula over and it's now referencing B100 is referencing A100. So if we had shipping data that came all the way down to A100, it would be part of our overall query. If I scroll all the way to the top, we see that the $25 is carried over. These are free, so they get carried over as zeros. The 25 and 20 and $5.25 also get carried over. Okay, we are basically done with this page. We now need to reference this shipping information back over here on the item price worksheet. And for the item price, a couple of things I want to do here. I want to create a header, first of all, so that we can kind of keep some of this clean. So in cell A3, I'm going to just create a header, and this was item price. And I'm going to actually skip column 2, column B and column C. And the reason why I'm going to skip that is because I have ideas of some other things I may show, not in this video series, but in future video series that will be super beneficial as well. So I'm going to move all the way over to column D, and I'm going to type a header of shipping. And in column E, I'm going to add a total price, because that's ultimately what the goal is to come up with a combination of the item price plus the shipping to give us a total price. And I think that's going to be good for right now. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to bold those so that they're easier and more, and they stand out. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, when I created this XML, I only have one class here, so it added that weird $20, and so we put a black bar over it just to ignore it. And I do need to go clean this up, but I didn't take the time to do that. So that $20 is still represented under that, and we're just ignoring that. It's not an actual cell. That's something that's further up in the code that needs to just be cleaned up. So the actual 8 cells, sold items, we need to align the shipping from the shipping page with the first cell or sold item here. And so we are going to, in row 5, move over to D5, and we're simply going to put an equals, because we want this cell to reference B4 on our shipping worksheet. So shipping, exclamation point, B4, and when we hit enter, that 0 is going to directly align with the $4,199. And now that $4,199, the shipping was 0. Let's go ahead and we are going to just drag this, this little box. For those that don't know, you can click on that little box, and we're literally going to drag that all the way down to row 100, because again, we're basing our ranges off of a 100 row, 100 rows worth of data in case there was up to 100 items that were sold. And you can go further than 100, you can do 500, you can do 1,000, it doesn't really matter. But for the demonstration we're building in this video series, we're only going to reference 100 specific rows. And what that did is it just dragged all of the shipping data directly from the shipping tab over to the items tab, and now we have them in alignment with exactly the item price that was sold and then the shipping that was associated with that item that was sold. Just for clarity's sakes, I'm going to take these other cells and we are just going to color those cells black as well, just so visually it kind of keeps everything in alignment. Now let's go ahead and total these two prices together. This is a sum function. This is probably the most common function in Excel and Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. And it's simply an equal sum. And then we are going to click on cell A5, a plus symbol, and we are going to click on D5 because those are the two cells that we want to combine or add together. And then we're going to put a closing parentheses and hit enter. And when I do that, we can autofill, but we're really going to do the same thing. I'm going to just grab this box, drag it all the way down to row 100, and because I want to sum this information if these had item cells. So what this is going to do is these zeros are going to be something now we have to kind of work around. We could do a if 0, then leave the cell blank. That's, I guess, one option around this. We could also just build our queries slightly different, which is probably the route I'm going to take here. So let me think this through. Instead of doing, let me show you a bad example. To get an average price, we want to get the average price of these, and that average price is $3,305. But if I simply do a formula which is equals average, which is how you would get the average price, but if I reference E5 through E100, because I want to make sure that I get the average of up to 100 sales, assuming there's those items that have sold and the data is populated, when I click this, it's going to show me an average price of $275, which we know isn't correct. You're just simply looking at these 8 sales, we know that's not correct. And that's because it's adding in all of these zeros to our average price. So there's a simple workaround, and that's an average if statement. So instead of just average, right behind the word average, we're going to add if. So average if, and we're going to average this range if, and now we're going to put a comma, open, double quotation marks, a less than, greater than, a 0, and a double quotation marks, followed by a closing parentheses. Now when we hit enter, it's going to give us an average price that aligns with what we had previously seen. It aligns with the average of $3,305. And so what this query that we just created is, it's an average if, so we're going to average this range, but only if the cell value isn't 0. So that's a quick and easy way to kind of get past that as a challenge. Let's move on to the highest price. This is a fairly easy formula. It's an equals max. And we are simply going to look at the exact same range. So we are looking for the maximum between E5 and E100. That's the range that we have been working with. And then we're going to put a closing parentheses. And when we do this, it's going to tell us that our highest price, a combined price, was $4,199. And just visually doing a quick research or a quick look, we can confirm that that's a true statement. Now, unfortunately, the low is not going to be as easy. If I just do a simple equals min, and I use the same range, E5 through E100, it's going to show 0 is, and that didn't even actually, oh, I have a underscore. It's going to show the low as 0 because it's looking and finding these zeros, and so it's saying, hey, 0 is the low. So we have to use a different query, and this is going to be a little bit more of a complex query. We're going to do an array range, and I'm not going to spend any time talking about an array range. I'm just going to share the query with you guys because this will be the only time that we use this throughout the video series. So it'll just be easier to just share the range, and then you guys can copy it from the description notes, or you can follow along and type it out as I'm typing this. So to do this, we're going to do equals array formula. So it's not array range, it's array formula. And then I wanted to have a open parentheses min, a second open parentheses with an if. So we're going to do an if statement. And then I want to say our range. If our range of E5 colon E100, so that's our range. If that is greater than 0, then, and by then I'm saying this comma, then, so basically we're saying E5 through E100 needs to be greater than 0 and ignore it if it's 0. So that's the if statement. But then we're going to say, if it is 0, if it is greater than 0, then what do you want us to do? And so we're basically going to say, we want the min of E5 through E100 that's not 0. So E5 through E100 that's not 0. And a closing couple, 3 closing parentheses. And when we hit enter, it's going to give us exactly what we want, which is 2,850. And just quickly looking at this, it looks like 2,850 is truly the lowest total price. And so we've accomplished exactly what we're looking for. So here's the 3 new formulas. Let's go ahead and move those over to the main page. So the average price, the high and the low, we can now populate those. We're going to use the exact same import range that we used in yesterday's video. Let's just go ahead and copy that. And we're going to paste it next to the average price. We're going to paste it next to the header of highest price. We're going to paste that next to the header of lowest price. And it did keep our M1 cell value. And because we've developed this where the next cell down is the information that we want, this is going to be easy. So we'll literally say for the average price, instead of M1, we want to change that to M2, hit enter, and voila, there we go. We now have the average price over these 8 cells, which these 8 cells are over the last 90 days of eBay sales data. In the high price, we're going to change that from M1 to M3. And in the low price, we're going to change that from M1 to M4. And so now we also pull over the highest and lowest prices. So this is starting to finally come together. We now have the next leg of this done. That's really going to complete today's video. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about pulling in the date when the items were sold. And by pulling in that date, that'll give us additional trending information for 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90 will be the date ranges that we want to. And then we can add trending, and we can add some formulas to say, okay, what's the percentage gain and the percentage loss over that 90-day period of time, or over those spans of time. And that'll help us identify if a card is selling for more over the last 90 days and is getting hotter in the marketplace, or if it's selling for less and getting colder in the marketplace. It'll also tell us if that card is running fairly flat, which for vintage cards, generally most of them run pretty flat. But that's going to be tomorrow's video. If you are still here and you enjoyed today's video and you're following along, please hit a like button. That helps get this video out to more and more folks. So I would certainly appreciate a like. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit subscribe. That'll allow you to see these videos when I post them. Of course, if you want to know exactly when I post them, hit that notification bell, and that'll tell you when I post the next video. It'll probably come out either tomorrow or the next day. But for now, this is where I'm going to leave you guys. I'm simply going to sign off by just saying thanks, and we'll talk to you in the next one.